Greetings, everyone. Welcome to the Future Trends Forum. We're very glad to see you all here today on our first session of August 2017. My name is Brian Alexander. I'm your host, cat herder, and MC for the hour. And I'm delighted that we've all had the time to discuss one particular aspect of the future of education. Now, in order to introduce everything, we have a few steps to take. I'll explain the technology and where we're from, but we give you the background on the forum and where it comes from. The forum is the, if you will, the discussion-oriented video spin-off of the Future Trends, Technology, and Education report. If you haven't seen that, that's a monthly trends analysis that looks at recent developments in education and technology, and then plots them against a bank of about 83 trends that we've been tracking for 5 years. So we're able to get some intelligence about where certain key developments are proceeding and give us some sense of where they may end up. If you haven't been yet, go to ftte.us. Current subscribers, wait about 21 hours, and the next issue will be out for August. But if you haven't seen it, please check it out. There's a lot of information there. Now, I mentioned this is discussion-oriented, and it's very, very important that if we're going to have a discussion about the future of education and technology, that this be done on a global, transnational level. We can't afford to be parochial. So you can see here from this map that we've had participants come in from all over the world, from the Middle East, from Europe, East Asia, Australia, Latin America, the United States, and Canada. It's really important, I think, that we can have these kind of discussions that look at the full range of higher education and technology. Now, we can only do this with the support of you, and I just want to explain where that comes from. First, we are grateful to NYSERDAT in New York State, a nonprofit that helps connect museums, libraries, colleges, universities across that state. We thank them for their support. We're also very grateful to Shindig, because Shindig provides two forms of support. They provide people that help us make sure everything works. They're very, very kind. And also they make the technology work. And let me just quickly explain where we are. So those of you who haven't been here before, which is some of you, and those who haven't been here for a bit, this is a video conference platform that is aimed at conversation. So what I'm doing right now, me with a PowerPoint presentation, this is going to go away in just a minute. The idea here is to have conversation. And in this space, there are 3 channels whereby you can communicate, where you can ask your questions, share your reflections, push back, and celebrate. So let me just walk you through them. First of all, if you would like to join us up here on stage, easy as can be, just go to the very bottom of the screen. You'll see there's a white strip that goes across the bottom. There's a few different icons. One of those icons is a raised hand. If you click that, that tells us that you're ready to come up on stage. So if your microphone works, and your camera works, and your broadband is just fast enough, and you're in a space that lets you talk out loud in front of strangers, please click that and come on up and you can join us. You can ask us, you can ask our guests, you can ask other people questions, and you'll see how that works. It's really easy to do. The second way is if you prefer to type a question, right down that white strip, there's a question mark in a little bubble. Click that, and then you can type in a comment or a question. And when the time is right, we'll flash it up on the screen, and I'll read it out loud so everyone can see that. You might want to do that if you're shy or if your camera doesn't work or you're in a public space. And if that's not enough, we also have a chat box, which is available for everybody who's come in and logged in with you. So that's roughly about 18 people. And if you click on, again, that white strip, there's a little square box, a few lines in it. If you click that, up will pop a chat box, and you'll have a chance to say hello to people right now. So right now I'm looking at a box with Brenda, Susan, Mark, Tabzira, Paul, Scott, Riyad, Karen, Danielle, Roxanne, John, Tony, Michael, Phil, Kate, Eileen, Patrick, and Ian. So you can get a chance to talk that way. Now, that's all within the Shindig environment. On top of this, if you're on Twitter, just use the hashtag FTTE, and we'll follow that. We can bring in your questions and comments. Again, we really want to hear from you, and I'll keep repeating this because this is discussion-based. Now, I also want to thank another group of sponsors, which is people who sponsor this work through Patreon. So if you go to patreon.com/Brian Alexander, you'll see dozens of people have signed up. If you don't know Patreon, that's you can see a picture of it in the next slide. That's a site like Kickstarter or GoFundMe, and the idea is to support a creative person. And instead of kicking in to support one project, you subscribe in order to contribute something every month. So, and that can be as little as $1. But this really helps us keep all the lights on, keep all the power running, and lets us have all these great conversations. So if you haven't been there before, or if you have, please consider supporting us at patreon.com. Now, that's background. Now we need to dive into today's wonderful guest and a great subject. Our guest is Professor Mark Carnes. He's at Barnard College in New York. In fact, he's coming to us from lovely upstate New York on the Hudson River. He's a historian, the author of about a dozen books, including one on teaching with games. And he's one of the creators and chief organizers of the wonderful Reacting to the Past game series. So we'll be talking about that and how it works. So as we go, I want you to be thinking about how games can work for education. Think about where they are at your institution, be it a museum, a library, college, or university, and think about games that you've used in the past or are still playing to see how you learn from them. So let's take down these slides and bring up Professor Carnes.
Brian, thanks for having me. Delighted to be here.
Oh, my pleasure. I'm so glad to see you and hear you. I'm so glad you made the time. Welcome. Let me just ask a quick opening question. When you're not doing Reacting to the Past, what do? You're researching American history in the 20th century? Or?
Well, I love history, but I suppose I would read. I play the piano. I read historical fiction. Many historians prefer to read fiction, and many novelists prefer to read nonfiction. So I like to go out of my own world and into imagine other ones.
I appreciate that. That's we're in a really good age for historical fiction, thanks in part to Hilary Mantel's great books on Henry VIII.
I did a book called Novel History, which was about historical fiction, but also the novelists themselves would respond to the essay also on the historian's take. So there's a lovely conversation. So I'm interested in that sort of imaginative interchange.
Excellent. Well, keep that in mind, friends, as we proceed, because after all, as a recovering English professor, I'm happy to see you talking about fiction. So let's talk about Reacting to the Past. So this is a game where students get to participate in a live discussion where they simulate a major dramatic event from the past, like the trial of Galileo or the trial of Socrates. We've had some questions about this online already before we begin. Can you tell us a bit about what it's like to be a student in a Reacting to the Past game?
Well, so the way a Reacting to the Past game would be is that you would start by being assigned a game book. Can you see the game book here?
Yeah.
There would be a game that's Athens in 403 BC. It's called The Threshold of Democracy. It's probably the most common reacting game. There are about a dozen published games that are published by Norton, and they're also published by the Reacting Consortium Press. So first, your instructor would assign a game book. You would be plunging into the historical context. You would also read, say, for this game that's in ancient Athens, you would read Plato's Republic. There'd be a couple of sessions that would introduce you to material. You'd be assigned a role in one of various factions, maybe as a supporter of the radical democracy, critic of it, maybe a Socratic. You'd be assigned to different factions, and then when the game would begin, the students would take charge of the classroom, the instructor would go to the back of the room, and various issues would surface. Should Athens has just lost the Peloponnesian War? Should it reconstitute the democracy that lost the war? Should it modify it? Should it punish those who oppose democracy, people like Socrates? Should it eliminate the democracy? So every game will have a cluster of issues. Students moderate and run the class themselves as different issues are folded into it. The game would unfold over between 3 to 6 or 7 class sessions. And then there'd be a post-mortem where the instructor and the students would discuss the experience of the class and discuss also what happened in history. So a reacting game is a student-run experience which, after a couple of setups, students are thrust into these worlds. They then run the game. The instructor will grade their written work, their papers, their essays, their various documents, and of course their class participation as the game unfolds. A well-designed game. Most reacting games have been in development for 4 or 5 years. Will adhere to historical plausibility for most of the game. And there will be, the students will have the capacity to change history, as was true in the past. The history didn't have to unfold the way it did, and reacting underscores that. So it's a dynamic experience. I suppose you'll call it live action role play. With a very, where the intellectual content isn't delivered by the instructor, but it's embedded in the game structure, embedded in the game book, in the roles that students are assigned, and then the various rules, some of which are known only to the instructors. So there are about a dozen published reacting games in many disciplines: history, religion, communications, art history, history of science. There are another 60 to 70 games that are in advanced stage of development. That is to say, they probably consist of a couple hundred pages of materials. A published game probably consists of anywhere from 800 to 1,400 pages of materials.
Wow. That's like 2 textbooks.
That's right. The game book itself, published game books, this is the one where 100,000 words, and then the goals are usually another 100,000 words, and then the instructor's manual, how to play it, embedded quizzes and things like that. Constitute a rather substantial intellectual apparatus. The idea being that instead of trying to push material onto students, you create a structure, a social structure, a competitive structure, an imaginative structure that draws students into the material. And as they explore the material, then their interaction with the material and with each other then teaches them the content, teaches them the intellectual structures.
This sounds fantastic. But please go ahead. Go ahead.
Let me emphasize that I'm the one who's talking here, but these games and the whole concept are the product of the work of probably 1,000 scholars. Design games who've taken this concept to take it in completely different directions from what I could have ever imagined, and have built a real elaborate and expanding intellectual and pedagogical structure. So the reason I'm really at this podium is partly I'd love to see, I could never have imagined 15 years ago when my academic career was derailed in this interesting and intriguing way that I'd evolved in future education, but I'm there now, and I'm hoping that a bunch of the people who are logged on here who are learning about reacting the first time will see that this is a new terrain with vast possibilities for creativity, for genius and tuition and development. So we invite you to become part of the enterprise and take it whither I know not.
Well, that's one of the pleasures of gameplay and game design, is you can't always tell what your players are going to do. Friends, I have a whole raft of questions from Mark, but let me just remind you that we'd love to hear your thoughts, your questions. I've already gotten a couple preloaded from people, one who couldn't make it today. But I just wanted to remind you that if you have played Reacting to the Past, or someone you know has, please feel free to chime in with your experiences. But again, think about, as we talk, if you don't have a question in mind, think about how this could unfold at your own institution. Would this, what classes, what disciplines, what faculty members would you be interested in creating one of these? And think as well what you know about gaming and education in general. So please don't let me hog the mic. I just want to pass on, Mark, one fan note from Laura Gibbs. She says, "Please tell Mark hello from me. I'm a happy player of his India game. I went to a regional RTTP conference a few years ago at Duke, and I'm a huge fan of everything that RTTP does. Huge fan is in caps, and there are 8 exclamation points at the end." So that's not a question. That's just a fan note. I want to pass it on from Laura Gibbs.
Well, the consortium runs, the Reacting Enterprise is run by a consortium of academics throughout the world, and we run 2 major workshops where you learn the pedagogy by playing it. You get your materials a month in advance, and you play the games. There's one at the University of Georgia that's coming in January, and our major summer institute in New York in every June. We also do about a dozen reacting workshops around the country, about one every month. So you might just Google reacting, find the main website, and come to a workshop, and it will be a very enjoyable and provocative experience. You will come as a skeptic, and you should come as a skeptic because it's a radically new way of looking at education. But there's a pretty good chance that you will be sucked into it. So I appreciate Laura's mentioning that, and I'm trying to. I don't know when our next Midwestern workshop will be, but I'm sure we've got a bunch of them coming up. We ran 7 workshops on one day in April 21st. Different, I shouldn't say we, but different reacting faculty ran workshops throughout the world in one day. So if you're at all intrigued by this, come to a workshop and you'll be with us.
I have to say, just to be in full disclosure, I have not played one, nor have I written one. I have researched gaming and education for close on 20 years now. And in 1999 and 2001, I helped teach a massive game across 3 different campuses about history and politics of the Vietnam War. So I'm just to put my cards on the table. I'm biased, but not completely biased. We have a question, though. A text question, if we could flash it on the screen, please. This is from David. David in Denver. Role-playing sounds like a great way to engage students, but how do you deal with the huge time commitment it takes to play the game in terms of limited class time? Great question, Dave.
This is a great question, and it's one of the trade-offs that faculty have to consider, which is that this is a great way of plunging students deeply into material, teaching them a whole range of skills, ranging from speaking and instrumental writing to critical thinking of a major sort of leadership teamwork. Faculty have addressed this in different ways. Sometimes they will take it as part of their survey. They will use this as a way of taking students deeply into a historical context, of trying to build a class community so that they will be logged in and plugged in when they have to go to the heavy slog of content retention. The other side of this is that we all know that when we're throwing lots of material at students, that most of it slides away very, very quickly. This material is embedded in student selves. It becomes part of their lives, and they don't lose it. So what you lose in terms of coverage, you gain in terms of what students will hold on to. That they will also engage with material, they will do research in a way that then gets them connected to the academic enterprise and become partisans in their own learning. So this is one of the advantages. But there, all the academic faculty who are in content-heavy courses have to make this sort of determination. Do we draw them deeply into an intellectual exercise with important resonances for skill building, or do we keep slogging information at them that they can gain through Wikipedia? We'll likely forget a few weeks after we throw it at them.
Well, that's a fantastic phrase that I would like to use, I think, weekly from here out, students becoming partisans of their own learning. And Dave, I'm sure that you've had these kind of questions before, regardless of technology, actually, about how, when you structure a class, do you aim for maximum coverage at kind of survey level, or do you reduce the amount of material or increase time for intensive student work? It's a classic trade-off. A good question.
Let me give one example that the university at Georgia State has just begun an initiative. They're doing online learning for their U.S. survey course, and they're worried that it's going to be an economic experience. So they're balancing that with they've got their online class, other content, and they're spending their class time with the reacting game, a couple of reacting games. They'll create the community in class. We'll get them fixed in a couple of particular points, and teach them a bunch of things that you won't get from an online course. So this is just one of the scores of ways that faculty use reacting to enrich a class that retains a strong coverage component.
One of several ways. Well, what people are scrambling to think of, Well, I'm sure right now they're they're Googling your site and trying to download some of the copies of the books. Let me ask a question from a different angle. Uh, you mentioned a very powerful pedagogical strategy of having the students be the moderators and the organizer of sessions. Can you speak a bit to the thinking behind that and how that works out in practice?
Well, this is absolutely crucial that for students to be, here's the way I put it, that we imagine as faculty members that students are focused on classes instruction. I'm sure you're aware that there have been studies where they put goggles on students and look at what they're looking at. And even in lecture classes, students spend more time looking at each other than the instructor. That is to say, students live in a world of their peers. They're always engaged with their peers. They're being assessed by their peers. Their minds are always interacting with their peers. And as long as we as faculty are standing at the front of the room and calling the shots, we don't have their attention. But when the students are running the show, when they're leading the factions, are running the game as key figures in history or in these moments, all of their attention is on the other students, and this community then becomes much more powerful. I learned this at the start when the very first games that I did, I was a participant, and I noticed that when students led the class, that I was just getting in the way. So I moved my chair back from the desk in the very first reacting class. They didn't notice that I was moving my chair away from the desk. Eventually, I was at the back of the room, and when there are multiple student leaders in their positions in the game as leaders who are running the game, they didn't notice that I didn't say anything at the back of the room. It was interesting how easily, how naturally they seized control of the classroom. And I used to think, well, students I could control a class of 40 or 50 or 150. Students couldn't do that. Well, I've been proven dead wrong. Reacting faculty have shown that students can run a class of 115 students easily, just as they can run their own organizations very easily. So it's an absolutely important point. If you're unwilling to surrender your control of the classroom, you'll get in the way of the students and this very rich dynamic that is absolutely central to the process, which is step to the back, grade, evaluate, get papers back quickly, give feedback, give encouragement, intervene as a role keeper, fold new historical elements into it to make it more challenging. And the instructor's manuals give you lots of guidance on how to spice it up. But let it be the student's world. That's essential. And when it's the student's world, it becomes magical. Very hard for faculty to do. But then when they see that students are doing things that they never did in the class that you dominated, then you surrender that and you're delighted. And that's one reason there are Reacting is now used at 315 colleges and universities, and there are lots of people like Laura Gibbs who become great converts to Reacting because their class does things that it never did when the instructor was calling the shots. It's just, and it becomes a delight to see students taking charge of their learning, demanding more, researching more, asking questions that you never could imagine.
Demanding more, asking, what more could we want? Well, we might want Scott. Welcome from Indiana. Scott,
Hi.
You're at Ball State or Purdue? You're at Ball State, right?
Ball State, yeah.
Welcome. What's your question for Mark?
Yeah, so I work in gamification, game design at Ball State, and something that I think about a lot with games in education and games in training, like in the corporate world and stuff, is that a core tenet of game design, of what makes a game, is that games are voluntary. And sometimes I worry about having a game in a classroom or requiring a game through training sessions for working at Chili's or something, that changes the experience or could lessen what they get out of the game if it was voluntary instead of required. And I was just wondering what your thoughts are on how edugaming reconciles the voluntary nature of games.
That's a really terrific question. I think part of the key is that on the one hand, you've got this tremendous element of this edifice of intellectual edifice that guides this game, that controls the game. So you've got these scholars who are really creating a fairly rigid intellectual structure where we're trying to throw students into all of these materials. Hopefully they'll percolate with them. But students are moderating it. Students are in charge of it all. It's sort of like this, that college football is very much a corporate enterprise for corporate purposes with powerful adults calling the shots. But when student athletes get on the field, it becomes their world and they delight in it because they're taking possession of the structure. I think something similar is going on when we create an intellectual structure, as long as we then get out of the way. So that the structure is there, students are then infusing it with their passions, their peculiarities, and so there is a tension here. It's a structure that is dictated by scholars, created by scholars. When students inhabit it, it becomes alive and dynamic and creative and even subversive. And students will try to rip apart the structure of the game to twist their own goals. And that's part of the fun as the game master. And the instructor is not the instructor. He becomes the game master. We don't use the terminology simulations. We use the terminology games. We want this to be a fairly plastic, supple structure with lots of input. But I think that's a wonderful question. I have no particular concerns on that score. There is Smith College had a confidential guide to courses about a few years ago, and the student published guide that said, reacting courses look like they'll be fun and easy, but they trick you into doing more work than all the rest of the courses combined. So it's that trickery. That trickery is trickery, and you trick them into getting involved in the academic enterprise. But they've been having fun in the process while learning. Okay, so it's that trickery that I think is exciting and dynamic, and is not a bad thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the presiding god of reacting to the past isn't Cleo, but Loki.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Scott, that's a great question, and Mark, what a passionate answer. Scott, stay up for a second. We have a couple of questions that are text, and I'd love to hear your thoughts too, based on your work. If we get the next text question, please. This is from Roxanne. Hello, Roxanne. What researchers did you find as most persuasive to support game design learning? And she puts that in parentheses, so it's either what research did you find most persuasive, or what researchers? Good question, Roxanne.
Okay, so I began doing reacting games sort of like you did, and tried it out. Had a very, very good experience. Realized that if we had students run them, they could go much further. This required building really elaborate enterprise, and so it'll be a lot of work. But it clearly seemed obvious, and it worked so well. And all the faculty, like you, who've done this sort of thing, even in a superficial way, found it to be very rich and powerful. So it seemed to me obvious that the philosophers of education would have embraced this. So when I decided about 10 years ago to write my book on reacting, that I just pull out the philosophers, cite the sources, and show how you do it with reacting. The problem was that the philosophers didn't say that reacting was a good idea. They said the opposite. Plato, Rousseau. They said, you've got your core self. And when you start playing games, and when you start taking other personas, when you start imagining you're someone else, you lose your core sense of self, and that's dangerous. Then we get to people like the apostles of play, people like Dewey and developmental psychologists. What they say is something very interesting. They say, it's okay to have these imaginative worlds when you're a kid. When you get older, you get rid of them. You become a real person. Your play should resemble the work world. So what I got was, here I'm seeing that students in my reacting classes as college students are learning far better than they ever did in any other way that I taught. And yet, of education are saying, They should not be doing that. They shouldn't be inhabiting imaginative worlds. They shouldn't be, as adults, they shouldn't be playing. They should be assimilating to the work ethic. The apostles of reform and education are saying, don't do this as adults. So for me, the key break was when I decided that one reason our play forms are ineffective and unpersuasive and haven't taken over higher education, and maybe even earlier education, is because we've been following philosophical models that say that play should resemble work. That especially as you get older, you shouldn't do make-believe because that weakens your sense of self, and you find your sense of self. It's a very strange 19th century and early 20th century notion. You've got a single sense of self. You've got a whole Erik Erikson. You have role confusion if you've got effeminate fathers, things like that. We don't believe that anymore. But this notion that you shouldn't do make believe as adults, you shouldn't be playing as adults. It means that we find it impossible to go in this direction. We have a knee-jerk reaction. You're playing games in college, you're doing make-believe in college, that's wrong. And I say, why is it wrong? And eventually get back to Plato, Rousseau, and 2 centuries of educational philosophers who've said that play is wrong for young adults, that make-believe is wrong for young adults, that what we're doing in reacting, thrusting students into situations that they love, they're make-believing, they're Puritan divines, they're Confucian scholars, they're Athenian Democrats, they're constitutional convention creators, all of these things that take them out of the world, allow them to imagine them to be something fantastic and wonderful. This makes people really nervous. And why? Because we've got a civilizational model that says it's just wrong. So I'm sorry, you asked what researchers told me to go in this direction. I couldn't find the educational philosophers that would endorse what I was doing, which meant my book was the hardest intellectual enterprise in my life. Because I didn't find the authorities that I needed to justify what I said.
And it has the best title, Minds on Fire. I'd love to follow up with this. A terrific question, Roxanne, and thank you again for a great answer, Mark. We have more questions coming from. Okay, the bar says John Stewart, but there's 2 gentlemen here, and one who has awesome hair. So, which one of you is John?
I'm John.
Hi, John.
I don't think so. And this is Keegan Longwheeler, my colleague here at OU.
Welcome, Keegan.
But I wanted to follow up on Scott's question. You asked, isn't play or games by their definition voluntary? And I just wanted to hear more about what is the cash value of that, because I feel very sold, very much a convert for the reacting to the past model. We also do a lot of gamification here. And I've heard that criticism before, but I'm not quite sure where it goes or what that implies, that we can't play games in the classroom or we can't acquire them, or that I'm not quite sure where that goes. So I just wanted to ask you to expand on your thought a little bit more.
Asking me? Or him?
Yeah, sorry, I was asking Scott and then hoping for a follow-up from Mark.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, it's really just games are kind of defined a lot of different places, a lot of different ways. And some places will say that games need to be voluntary in order to be games. I don't necessarily think that means something may not be worthwhile if it's not categorized specifically as a game. It's just a matter of, I guess what I would wonder, and that was really what I was asking about, is the experience the same if it's required of someone? Are you still taking the same chances? Are you, having the fail-fast mentality that you should have in a safe zone of a game if it's required materials? Like a good example, I guess, that I have from some of my experience is I used to be a server at Chili's, and we had a thing called Margarita Madness where when, the first time I started, it was all positive reinforcement. So, when I would sell margaritas, I would get pats on the back and gift cards and stuff like that, but didn't have to do it. And then in the following years, a new company had bought out Chili's where I worked, and they changed Margarita Madness to where we had to sell a minimum of 2 margaritas. It was required, but then there were bonuses if you sold more. And what wound up happening was people met those minimum requirements, and it didn't feel as much like a game, just kind of convoluted requirements of the servers. And so that's my, I guess, my fear with when we have grades attached to games, or someone's job attached to a game, or things like that. Is that still offering your same intended experience if there are very real repercussions to someone not playing the game well? Like, will they still get that quick feedback loop and be willing to fail fast and do the things that you want them to do, even if there's even if there's a perceived notion, of it being an involuntary event? Does that make sense?
I think that's whose turn?
Yours.
Yeah, sorry, that makes a lot of sense to me. I agree with that definition. Our general approach to it is to not grade on the gameplay, I guess, but to grade on the learning, and to build in other forms of assessment that evaluate more about the learning. Formative feedback, obviously, and then some of the feedback that aren't based on gameplay, but are sort of parallel to the gameplay. But yeah, I'm interested to hear more from Mark as to how he sees that within RTTP.
Please.
I'm sure, John, that you've had students that I think one of the surprising things to faculty who become early converts to reacting, they've gone to a workshop, they've had this extraordinary experience, they're excited to bring it to their students. They announce to their students, we're going to play this game, you'll have goal. John, what game did you do first? With your students?
I haven't even gotten to play any. We've helped some people around campus set up a couple of courses, and then we have other games that have integrated into a lot of what we do.
Okay, so what happens is that the enthusiastic instructor announces this to the students, and the students then begin to ask questions. You mean I'm going to have a role? I'm going to be giving speeches. I'm going to be persuading other people of things. And they think, now I can either sit in the back of the room and take notes or not in another course, or I can be in this classroom and do all these weird things. This really sounds awful. And so one of the problems we have is faculty are all enthusiastic. They think the students are going to like doing something fun and different, and the faculty know it's fun and different because they've done it. And the students are appalled. They would rather sit in the back of the room and snooze. So what happens is you start the game, and because it's a good game, and it wouldn't be published if it weren't a good game that's gone through hundreds and hundreds of test plays. What happens is students, they see their peers are doing things, they're running it, their peers are leading them, encouraging them to do stuff. They get drawn into their faction, they get drawn into the drama of the moment, they find resonance with the character they're representing, and quite quickly they get seduced into this imaginative world and seduced into doing lots of work. And so then the game becomes real. It becomes real partly because, and this is what you don't get at Chili's, it's also subversive. It's subversive in the sense that you're conniving against another faction. You're trying to outwit the game master who's created conditions for winning that are really, really tough. You're trying to master material, so you've got to one-up over someone else. You're plotting, you're conniving, you're strategizing, you're engaged in authentic fun, and you didn't get that at Chili's. Okay, that was a bad game. Okay,
yeah,
these aren't bad games. These are designed by people who test played them and who found out how we can, by having students run it, by having students with lots of twists and turns to keep things open and fluid and supple. It becomes a really good game that's historically plausible that wins students over. So that's what I'd say. But students are not immediately attracted to the notion of playing imaginative games in class. Not all, but they quickly are seduced by it.
This is fantastic. Thank you, John and Keegan, for bringing up this question. We have a stack of other questions that have just come in. Let me just see, which one do we have first? I think we have one on Twitter, and we have a bunch of text questions that came in. And we have a questioner. We have Susan Hawk. Susan.
So you can take one of the text questions away because it's from me.
Okay.
I was getting impatient. So I'm a big fan. I've read Minds on Fire, and I've used the new Stages of Power game with my students in the spring.
It's a game. Describe the game for people.
Okay, yeah. So I'm a literature English lit faculty member, and I used it in a world lit class where we do from antiquity to the early modern period. And the game asks students to take the roles of actors in the companies of Shakespeare and Christopher Marlowe. And then the third indeterminate set of players are the Queen's Privy Council. And so the battle is between the two companies for the Privy Council to choose which of their plays will be approved and produced. And so they have to be thoroughly familiar not only with the particular plays, that is kind of up to the instructor's discretion, which ones you think will work best, but with the background documents about theater and the moral implications of the content of the plays or just acting in general. It drags them into the religious controversies of the period. Anyway, it was a huge success. I saved it for the end of the semester so that I could kind of cultivate some community among the students and assign roles a little bit more easily. But they loved it, and I was shocked at how easily I could just take a back seat. I mean, it was amazing. They just really jumped right in. And my students are at a regional public university, so I was concerned that because they're not at a residential liberal arts school, they wouldn't have as much time to meet with each other in the dorms at night and have the kind of time that maybe other students at more elite universities have to meet outside of class. And I was also shocked at the way that even our students who were working too much and have all of these other, adult commitments at home were strategizing about when they could get to the library to meet together over the weekend. I mean, I've never seen that happen where they'd say, oh, when can you get together? When can you get together? We need to work on this outside of class. And I wasn't expecting them to do that at all. I didn't tell them they needed to. Anyway, enough about just what a success it was. My question has to do with persuading colleagues that there's something valuable to be gained, even in the face of the kinds of things you've already discussed, that, they have to give up some control. There's some real weighing of, whether they want to sacrifice their sense of coverage. Can we get through all the things that I'm used to marching through in 15 weeks if I make space for this game? But what I'm interested in is actually something really specific to academe, which is that some people are so invested in their disciplinary knowledge that the idea that some interdisciplinary kinds of skills like ethical reasoning and written and verbal communication might actually be, equally or more valuable for their students than instilling this very specialized sense of like, this is, what we know in my discipline. And if I will feel that I have somehow cheated you if I haven't covered X in this class. And so I'm in the position of being the director of our Teaching and Learning Center, and I can help to promote the pedagogy, but I'm anticipating that there's just this sense of kind of disciplinary allegiance that potentially gets in the way of their seeing, for undergraduates, what what might be worth their thinking more broadly about what we're doing here.
Thank you for underscoring how easy it is for students to take charge of the classroom. That's something we've all been surprised by. And it does happen. It happens organically. That's because it is authentic play. To get back to Scott's point earlier, it's fun in an authentic way, and so unlike the Chili's experience, it can take over their lives. 2 questions here. Persuading colleagues to do something that's different from what they're accustomed to doing, and the second is making a case beyond one's discipline or the requirements to cover the essential material of their course. Let me try to take on both points, and please stop me if I just give too long a lecture here. Colleagues, we've had the decade of assessment, and the decade of assessment has been that once we find out what works, that then faculty will change and we can improve higher education by finding out what works. It became pretty pretty clear early on that reacting was really, really successful, and the various assessments that came through were very, very powerful. Faculty, for the most part, have ignored assessment, and this is one of the big failures of the assessment movement, which was that once faculty are told what works better, that they will change. The truth of the matter is that faculty prefer to teach the way they are familiar with teaching, even though they're not particularly happy with the results. That is to say,
Yeah.
most faculty members don't enjoy teaching, or at least they bitch about it incessantly. They do anything they can to get out of teaching, and yet when people like Susan say, well, do you want to try something different? You might want to try this strange pedagogy where we're playing games and I'm sitting in the back of the room and I've got these wonderful classes and I'm nudging students outside of class and having really exciting teaching experiences. And the faculty look at Susan as if she's crazy. So other than to make the point that you are not happy with what you're doing and you're skeptical about whether it works, that should be a clue that maybe you should try something else. We are profoundly, as Derek Bach pointed out in his book, Our Underachieving Colleges, we are profoundly wedded to traditions and conventional practices in higher education, even though we're not really happy with them as faculty. So this is a long slog. There's no easy way to doing it, and I'm sure, Susan, that some of your colleagues are puzzled by your passionate endorsement of your class, and they're puzzled as well about your students who are meeting after class and assuming you must be doing something illicit and subversive. And the fact is you are. You're empowering the students. You're encouraging them to think in big ways and to take possession of their education. And that's weird, and it's a hard battle. The other battle, so I don't really have, if I had a solution, I wouldn't be yammering away as long as I am. It's part of the challenge of the future, which is that we have an enterprise that is not creating strong results, that is under profound stress from a bunch of challenges, and conventional practices just may not survive. As for the interdisciplinary argument, or the argument, we all believe that the subjects of our dissertation are absolutely essential to the world. We want the world and our students to learn that subject because it is central to our life. You can't imagine that people could live lives without the benefit of that knowledge system. They probably can. And we create interdisciplinary classes, general education classes, because we think it's important, at least at some imaginative level. Someone thinks it's important for students to get outside of the burrow holes that have become our academic specializations, to make some connections, to find some things, show that the academic enterprise has meaning and purpose and touches on the important issues of our world and of life. I think reacting is the natural interdisciplinary course. It's the natural general education course, but it's also a way of taking some of our disciplinary issues and giving them some intellectual heft. I think it's a hard argument to make, especially to the young professor who believes that their discipline and their dissertation are the only things that really matter in the world, or to the senior professor who's taught the same course forever and can't imagine a world that doesn't have that content floating out to a number of undergraduates. So these are difficult battles, and I wish I had better answers, but people like Susan 5 years from now are going to have better answers than what I've given to these sorts of issues.
Thanks. It's a pleasure to talk to you.
Well, thank you.
Susan, what a fantastic question. I'd love to follow up and bug you online
Sure.
as another literature instructor. So welcome. Friends, I'm conscious of time, and if I were the dictator of the universe, I would strap Mark to this chair for the next 6 hours and ruthlessly interrogate the poor man. But we have a couple more questions from our fun community. Let's take a look at Todd. Todd has a pair of questions on the same theme. Let's see if we can flash these on the screen. He asks, is there a difference between play and game as far as a course goes? And how do we encourage more playful environments in classrooms? It's a deep question.
To me, the essence of play are three elements. One is social competition. The other is make-believe. And the third is that the enterprise is somehow subversive. That soccer is subversive in the sense that it takes the main convention of the species, using our hands, and says you can't do it. So that the game should promote play, and play requires those three elements. And that's where Dewey and company screwed up, is that they didn't like the idea of imaginative play for adults, and they didn't like the idea of subversive elements because it would deflect people from their adult tasks. Part of what we do as adults is we engage in subversive play. It's part of what makes our humdrum existence imaginatively rich. That's quick. I'm trying to be sharp and quick.
Oh, that's an elegant answer to a great question. We have another question from Kate G. Let's see, is that a text question or a video question? Whichever one. Let's bring question or questioner up.
Hi there. So I understand. I am a huge fan of gaming and simulations as an educational endeavor. Huge fan. My concern comes when you talk about social competition being one of the three key elements in this day and age. I am searching for and encouraging as much as possible collaborative efforts and win-win situations in training and learning in general. So interest-based negotiation, deliberation rather than debate. So I'm wondering if your work includes room for encouraging that kind of social engagement instead of competition.
A terrific question, and I've given my views on what is fun. The Reacting Consortium, the faculty, we debate this issue ad nauseum. Let me just give one of the games, the game set in South Africa, was just published this year on Apartheid. It's a game where it's not about competition. It's about coming together to solve problems. So there are different faculty who look at, and designers who look at this issue in different ways. I think that competition is part of the motivational power of gaming, and that a game that doesn't have all of the motivational pistons firing away has got a chance of students hiding out and getting bored and not being involved. Other reacting faculty being on dead wrong. So on this point, and every other thing I've said, I think today, there is a dispute in the reacting community. There are hundreds and hundreds of faculty behind this enterprise. I'm a partisan on certain issues, and I'm one of those who's pro-social competition. Because I believe that's where all I have to do is look at Facebook, and students are just immersed in competition. Maybe too much. So maybe you're right, we need to go in other ways. And that's where some faculty designers have set up games exactly along the lines you're talking about.
Great.
Fantastic question. Oh, thank you very much, Kate. We are at the almost the end of our hour, and a beautiful question comes from Paul PDB, which leads us out of the way. And this is not a question that I posed, so I deny all responsibility, although I love it to death. Have you or would you entertain the idea of a reacting to the future type game to complement reacting to the past?
We have people in the reacting community that are pursuing this and other initiatives. What we've decided, one of the challenges of the Reacting Consortium is that we've got a concept, but the concept is based on breaking intellectual barriers, and yet we're creating structure that is itself a barrier. So one way that we have of trying to keep our ideas fresh is that we've got a subunit that's got an independent governing board called the Game Development Conference. And the Game Development Conference pursues ideas in gaming that have nothing to do with the reacting orthodoxy. So Reacting to the Future would not be a reacting game, but it's the sort of thing that the Game Development Conference pursues. And the Game Development Conference usually has a meeting in July. This past year it was at Newman University. Next year, I'm not sure where it'll be, but the charge of the Game Development Conference is to think of new ideas without any fetters whatsoever. So it's, I don't know where this enterprise is going, and we've created structures to ensure that they are free from the orthodoxy of the reacting editorial board and the reacting board that governs Index.
Well, that's a rich answer, and you can bet I'm going to follow up on that. I have all kinds of great ideas. But I have to say, I'm sorry that following up is what we're left with, because it is the end of the hour. We have had a rich seminar conducted by you, Professor Carnes, on this fantastic pedagogy, and we've had terrific questions from just a range of people. I'm so delighted. I've been forcing myself not to type repeatedly because I have so many questions and notes. Let me just thank you so much, Mark, and make sure that everyone knows that Minds on Fire is a book that you and your library should have and take deeply to heart. I hope we can follow up next year and continue to get more ideas for our minds.
Brian, thank you so much for having me. I was just delighted to do this, and what great questions they were.
My pleasure. Thank you again. Thank you again. We'll talk to you soon. Now, before we end, we have to remind you of where things are for the next week. I'm just so tickled by this. This is such a rich idea. Next week, we shift ground to have the fantastic journalist Jeff Salingo as our guest. Jeff is a regular writer for the Washington Post about education. He has published a series of books that are both useful and provocative about education. He is a star, and I'm delighted to have him as a guest. So follow this fellow on Twitter, read his columns, and be ready to pounce on him with questions. Now, besides that, we have a couple of book-related ideas. So we are just finishing our online book club's reading of Rainbow's End. And so again, if you haven't read it, this is a science fiction novel about near-future education and how it would change or the impact of a lot of technological inventions. It's a rich, fascinating book. So just go to that URL and you'll grab all of our blog posts and a whole raft of discussion about it. And speaking of books, not to promote myself too much, but the second new revised edition of my digital storytelling book just came out. So if you'd like to learn about digital storytelling, what it can do for you as a person, as a teacher, as an academic, as a citizen, grab this book. You can grab it on Amazon from the publisher or by Kindle. And I'd be glad to tell you all about it. Now, that's it for now. If you'd like to learn more about us, go to ftte.us to find out more about the Future Trends Report. Go to shindig.com to learn more about this wonderful technology. If you'd like to learn more about my work, you know plenty about it. Go to brianalexander.org or follow me on Twitter. Until then, I'll see you online, and I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.